Hey friends, welcome. This is our American Mussar weekly community gathering. I'm Rabbi Greg Marcus. This is Lila the Mussar Kitty. So this week it will be our second week exploring the soul trade of enthusiasm. It's also known as alacrity. So we'll get started the way we always do with a short meditation. So I invite you to close your eyes. I guess Lila's not into meditations. That's too calming for her. Okay, so let's close our eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, Harry and Marianne and Joanne, nice of you to join us. Nice to see you. Okay.
Hey, Rabbi Greg,
Yes,
that has a nice ring to it.
it does.
Rabbi Greg, our Rabbi Greg.
That's right. It doesn't get old. Thank you, Linda. Okay. So we'll get started.
Oh, that's good.
So I want to do a little bit of a check-in. So if you were here last week, how did alacrity or enthusiasm show up for you? Or maybe even if you weren't, did you try a practice? Or if there's some other way that Mussar showed up for you in this last week, I would love to hear it. Okay, and first up is Wendy.
Hi, we had a community-wide practice of enthusiasm and hesed, and patience was thrown in there. It was so exciting. I didn't want to go, but I decided I would just do what Krista was saying and show up for someone in person. And it was very wonderful. It's called Empty Bowls. I don't know if any of your communities do empty bowls. Oh yeah, Toby, you've probably heard of empty bowls. It's county-wide, so there was about, I think, probably 1,200 people there, which is big for our county.
Oh,
Artisans in the county make bowls, like ceramic or wooden bowls, and then they set them all out. And then about 5 restaurants prepared soup, and then they get them all ready to go. And then people get in a long, long line. And the like the invitation to that says, we're waiting in line, like all of these people who are hungry have to wait in line so that we can kind of feel like they feel. And it it was wonderful. But I thought this is this perfect practice of enthusiasm, patience, and hesed all at one time. It's just great to participate in. I
Yeah,
love
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just a wonderful example and kind of ties into some of what we're going to be covering today of, sometimes, oh, I don't want to do it. Oh, I'm just going to go. It's that I'm just going to go energy. That's where the enthusiasm can come into play. Toby.
Well, empty bowls is great. We used to go as an office. We would go in our lunch hour. They would hold it in downtown Phoenix, and we were downtown, so we would all go and stand in line. And the bowl, I still have the bowls because you get to keep the bowl. That's one of the things. But it's a wonderful occasion for people to gather who would never have anything to do with each other normally, or probably wouldn't anyway. Great philanthropic idea. Anyway. My little alacrity thing was a friend of mine invited me to join her in going to this fancy old people's home because I'm old and she's old. So we went, and this place is like the fanciest hotel you could ever imagine. You walk in, there's a concierge desk, and it's like I felt like I had to check in. Could I get my room key? It was crazy. And it's on the campus of Arizona State University. It's the only building of its kind. It's a 24-story building, and it's a senior graduated living situation, but you would never know it. These places look like condos in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Anyway, it's very cool, but you get fever pitch sort of enthusiasm, which I'm sure that's what they want. So you can plunk down your money. So I'm now looking to for some good ideas as to how to raise $10,000 so I can put my name on the waiting list. So much for alacrity. Anyway.
Thank you, Toby. Susan.
Yeah, I just realized that I felt rather triumphant this afternoon putting together an email to send out to another group I'm in at my synagogue is kind of racial justice oriented. We worked with a trainer in DEI, a lot of congregants and board members and employees, and a group of us decided that we want to continue studying about this and reading things and exploring texts and information about stuff we know less about than we should. And I signed up for next Thursday to provide a topic, and I wasn't doing it. And I finally, with some nudging from one of my favorite people in the group, who organizes a room for us, I chose something, a podcast. We try and pick something, modest, a few articles to read, or a podcast to listen to, or some TED Talks maybe, and no whole books or anything like that. And the topic was environmental justice, and I wanted to go to something local, but I found Pioneers, which I'd heard of, and very inspiring. So we have a topic for next week, and I feel like I overcame my lack of alacrity.
Very great. Very well done.
Positive.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, Frank.
In Louisville, Kentucky, our Jewish community is having a new director for a Jewish Community Relations Council, and he's trying to meet some of us. And so I had a meeting with him yesterday, and we met at a coffee shop where it's a walking distance from my house, and I think I went with enthusiasm, to see what he was interested into learning from me and what I could share with him. So that was good.
Fantastic. Thank you. Joanne.
So I always have a busy week, and there were like 3 days in a row when I went to exercise at the libraries. So Monday and Wednesday is chair yoga, and Tuesday at 10 was qigong, which is wonderful. I just done it a few times before. They had someone in the spring for like 3 weeks, and so I don't know, trying to do those kind of things. I also had a board of directors meeting in this shul, and then I'm a sisterhood co-president, so we're talking about how we're going to have the sukkah put up. I brought it up at that meeting, and so I'm trying to stay on top of things, and I'm very happy that there's a few people who keep reminding me about things. But I also we're doing something for Rosh Hashanah. We package apples and a jar, like a honey bear for each congregant member unit, and we did that. This will be the third year. So I got the bags, and somebody else is working on the honey, and somebody else is going to get the apples, and then I guess the alacrity was like, I said, I better send them all an email, like we need a date and time to do this before Rosh Hashanah because it's coming up. So so I feel like I'm trying to stay on top of that. I'm also, trying to pay down my credit card debt, so then maybe I could put 10,000 on something,
Mm.
you know. And I have no car right now, so that saves a lot of money. Let me tell you, with the insurance and the parking and this and gas. So, but I also had a lot of computer issues, and I had, I don't know, I guess a phishing incident, like my PC started flashing and lights won't go and alarms and said you have a virus, and stupidly I fell for that because it's happened to me before. And the whole thing was bogus, and I don't think I suffered any bad effects, but I did sign up with my computer company, Tech Assistance. So I hope they call me tomorrow because it's possible that my computer is still exposed. But I'll find out. But I'm trying to stay on top. Takes a lot of energy though, to do all those things.
It does, absolutely. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to stay on top of things, and you've got a lot going on. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joanne. Well, I had my little bit of alacrity today. I won't show you, but I got my COVID shot today, and sort of as soon as they sort of came out, I started looking around to see where I could get one, and I had to reschedule it once because we were traveling, and I didn't want to kind of have any headache or lingering sickness. But I got it today. I figured if I get it at 3 o'clock, I probably won't have any symptoms from 4 to 5, so I can get through. But yes. Anyone else care to share a comment? Okay, well, let's take it a little bit deeper.
I'm not familiar with that.
So revisiting the spectrum of enthusiasm, our mantra, or one of the mantras, is make the most of each moment. And I want to talk about maybe this side, and I heard a little bit of this, I kind of from most people, this sort of when we can get too little enthusiasm or too little alacrity. I say call it here slothful and lazy, but I don't probably wouldn't use those words, if I was writing this today, but it's kind of not getting that energy to stay on top of things. And I'm wondering, like, what are some of the things that can kind of help you kind of get that energy, to kind of stay on top of stuff or do stuff when maybe you're not feeling it that day? Yeah, Wendy.
Well, to get the enthusiasm to go to empty bowls, I actually picked up the flyer and I read it over and over, and I kept looking at the empty bowls and thinking about those bowls and trying to, you know, motivate myself. So
Mm.
sometimes maybe if you want to do something, you don't have the enthusiasm, you might want to look into finding out more about it.
Mm.
Something might trigger your enthusiasm.
Yeah. So kind of prime the pump a little bit by getting some more information, and sort of, it almost sounds like you were kind of visualizing the event and looking at the bowls, and yeah,
And thinking about the people who dedicated themselves to making these bowls, and then it just, you know, I kind of went in thankfulness
Mm.
more than like just wanting to get a bowl. I sort of said, all these people are doing all of this. And so
Mm.
after reading about all of their work that they put in and all of the loving kindness that went into it, and I said, yeah, I should totally go, just so that I could be there, like Krista was saying, show up. And they were grateful. You could tell they were grateful that people were there.
Thank you, Wendy. Other thoughts? Yeah, Toby.
Well, for me, enthusiasm is contagious. So my friend was so enthusiastic about this place that we were going to. I had no, I figured I'm not old enough to go to an old people's home, even though I technically am. I'm way over the age. But her enthusiasm about it, I'm like, okay, fine, all right, I'll go. And it turned out that I ended up being the more enthusiastic person once we got there and saw all the stuff that was going on. All these young old people. It was very it helped to generate excitement. So I think for me, the excitement of my friend was contagious, and I caught it. And then when we got there and everybody else was really enthusiastic, it was kind of the atmosphere of enthusiasm.
Yeah. And I would even go so far as to say, is you let yourself catch it. You could have gone, it's okay, fine, you go do that. But it's like, okay, I'll do it, and see what happens. And yeah. I also find for me that, if I'm kind of in the habit of staying on top of things, it's easier to keep staying on top of things. But if I put one thing off, then I might put something else off, and then, like I've been trying to kind of get more, sort of stay more on top of things. I'm like, I have a game that I like to play on my iPad. It's like, all right, we're not going to play that like during the day. I play it after 8 o'clock at night or something. And then last night I played it later than I wanted to, and I was later going to bed than I wanted to. It's like, okay, so you got to be done by 9:30. So because that takes away from my ability to kind of stay on top of stuff or do the things that I would rather do. Any other thoughts? All right, well then, oh, yes, Harry.
Yeah, when I think of enthusiasm, I don't think of enthusiasm for me. I think of enthusiasm for other people that excites you. The classic area is sports and sports teams, especially when they come from behind.
Yeah.
Game, or you see a great play, that's you really get enthusiastic. So it comes more naturally when I'm doing for other people, or if my kids do something unbelievable, I'm very enthusiastic to accomplish something. So I tend to get my enthusiasm not from myself for what I do, but for what I see outside of me.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Wendy.
I was thinking about the spectrum when you showed it to us, and this might be a particular thing for enthusiasm only. I don't know. I haven't experienced this so much with the other traits, but since I have too much enthusiasm, lot. And then when I looked at the spectrum, I thought, oh, that slothful looks really good, because you can get worn out. You can get tired, and you can just do harm to yourself by having too much enthusiasm. So I thought, yeah, to be actually balanced in enthusiasm is a little bit more difficult for me.
Yeah.
And so I thought the spectrum, I said, I so want to grab that slothful and say, yes, that just for the day.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the people I think who talk about themselves being lazy are some of the hardest working people I've ever met. So it's like, it can feel, this may or may not be true of you, but for some people, and probably for me, it's like any sort of taking my foot off the pedal at 100%, taking it back a little bit can feel like, being slothful. And that's sort of like, okay, that's sign that, all right, I need to gives an opportunity to kind of balance and do a little bit less. All right, well, next we're going to follow up on the topic, go a little deeper on the topic that I talked about in my email today. So we'll want to have a couple of people to volunteer reading, or at least one to get us started. Who would like to begin to read the first bullet and sub bullets? Yes, Susan.
Yeah, I will. According to Maimonides, the 4 steps of giving an apology. 1, verbally state what you did wrong. Make it clear to the other person that you know what you did was hurtful to them. 2, ask for pardon and express genuine remorse. 3, make amends. 4, let them know you will behave differently in the future when in a similar situation down the road. Behave differently.
Great, thank you.
Clear.
Yeah, so I find this like one of the reasons why I think he was such a genius is he could put these things together in very clear ways. And a number of these ideas are like here and there, different parts of the Talmud, and he kind of brought them all together and added a few more. Okay, so let's sort of start to tie this in to both alacrity and chesed. So Susan, maybe you could read the next bullet, please.
Sure. Those with alacrity act promptly to do good, for the evil inclination works, attempts to prevent people from doing good. Did I read that right?
I left the word works in. I was editing this. So
Okay.
for the evil
Okay.
inclination attempts to prevent people from doing good.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, so you did read what was there, but that was my,
It didn't make complete sense. Thank you.
yeah. So before we talk about, and then the last piece is chesed is supporting another person without expecting anything in return. So I want to kind of put these 3 ideas in conversation, or at least the 2, like how does alacrity and giving an apology come together? I'm going to stop the share so we can see each other, and I will put all of this in the chat. Yeah, Joanne.
Unmute. Okay. Usually I try to apologize as soon as I realize that I did something wrong, or said something wrong. But actually, the thing that makes me a little crazy, and I am a little crazy, is when people say, "Oh, don't worry about it." It's like I'm apologizing, or never, just forget about it, And then I feel like they took away my ability to actually make amends or apologize, They don't, by not accepting it. And sometimes I know in Judaism, you're supposed to ask, I think 3 times for someone to accept your apology. And so I might ask it again, Like, no, I really want you to apologize. Oh, no, I know you, no, we understand each other. It's like, that's not the point. All right. I'm done.
Yeah, when people say that to me, I try to say, oh, thank you so much. I forgive you. Or, maybe, but you bring up a really good point. It's sort of like when someone offers to oh, you just had surgery. Can I bring you food? It's like, no, no, thanks. I'm okay. I'm eating toast and butter. I'm fine. Really, I could bring you a lasagna. No, no. It's good butter. It's a good Irish butter. It's very rich. It's like,
Probably
okay.
not good.
By turning that down, I lose the opportunity to practice generosity and giving. And in a similar way, what I'm hearing is you're sort of feeling shut down and not,
Yeah.
so yeah, thank you, Joanne. How else does alacrity come into play with this idea of giving an apology? I know I wrote about, yeah, Harry.
Well, it's nice to get an apology, but you don't want a reluctant apology. Uh, you want someone who really wants to apologize, and that's shown through their enthusiasm that they, in a sense that they really want to apologize.
Yeah,
Versus someone, okay, I'm sorry, I guess.
right.
Not really an apology. So I think how you deliver the apology is critical.
Yeah.
Apology.
That reminds me, I can't remember who said it, but one of the Mussar rabbis said, enthusiasm is like an ornament to the other soul traits. It's kind of doing them with a little zest, a little, with energy.
Well,
And
that you mean it. You have to show you mean it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Who wants a half-assed apology or something where someone's really clearly not sorry? They just felt like, for whatever reason. So yeah.
Speaking about apology, I had an interesting event. My mother, my daughter-in-law, and my wife have not had great relationships for 15 years.
Mm,
It's because of one event that happened on the phone. And my wife thought she was doing apology, real apology. And the problem with that is the other person may not know that she did something wrong. Which,
yeah.
and my wife didn't want to point it out as much as she should have.
Mm,
So it just laid there and it affected the relationship. But she did talk to my son, and she explained it. And then we had a get together this week, this summer. And so evidently my son did talk, he did say to his mother, my wife, should I tell her? Should I tell her the hurt?
mm,
Because how else does she know?
right.
And my wife said no. She
Mm,
should, it should be natural. This was so egregious. You shouldn't have to tell her. You know what I'm saying as they approach her. Finally, he told her. And the only problem was we got the apology, sort of, but it was a text message.
mm,
So, you don't, the hurt came from a phone call conversation, not from something she wrote. So that's an example of, well, how did she really apologize if she couldn't talk
mm,
to the person? They sort of worked it out through the texting back and forth, but it really wasn't the greatest. So we'll see how things work out. But it is important, I guess, when you do give an apology, that you show that it's a meaningful apology.
Yeah,
it probably should be in person, not in text. Especially if the problem came because of something was said.
yeah.
So that was an interesting story that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Harry. And yeah, it's so, these interactions are so complicated. And I'm glad to hear that some channel of communication was opened and at least things are out on the table, even though it was not ideal the way it all came about and how, how the apology came through. But
Yeah,
like
but for the apology to work, the other person has to know.
yeah. And I think that's part of the alacrity, and that's kind of what I wrote about too, where the person really almost didn't come and tell me
That there was a harm.
that, yeah, what it was done. I just had no idea. And so, and then when it was pointed out to me, I was like, oh crap, yeah, I really did mess up here. But it's if they hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. And it could have just, as you talked about, you could have just lain there and the friendship could have really suffered. And that would not have been good.
People that have adult children, as you know, there's a book that was recently written. It's called Walking on Eggshells.
Mm,
And that's what you have to do sometimes, because you're dealing with all these different boundaries,
yeah,
things like that. But anyway, that's life.
yeah. Yeah, Frank.
It kind of reminds me, and see if it fits. If the idea is that if we wrong somebody, or you do some, whether it's husband and wife or with a friend, or the idea is to get back to them quick.
Mm,
Like the idea that I think the teaching, the wisdom is to try to do something before night sets in.
mm,
And I think that there's a kind of a relationship. The idea is that you want to do that, and you do that with enthusiasm because you want to do it, even though but it is forgiveness.
mm.
So that's the way I put those two
Yeah,
together. And now that is if you know what happened.
right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Does anyone here kind of, oh, go ahead, Harry.
No, I just, that's this idea of being vulnerable. Sometimes to tell people that you have to feel vulnerable. You have to say, yeah, I don't feel comfortable, but you got to tell them, even though you you want to avoid conflict or whatever. But if it's hurtful, you have to feel vulnerable to tell them and take whatever that other person's going to say about it.
Right.
Because if it doesn't come out, sometimes, as you know, if they had done this quickly and they got it all out,
mhm.
we've been on to the next chapter a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Mhm.
But that's life. But anyway, hopefully things will get better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, with the case with my friend, they almost didn't tell me because in the past, when they've told people, the person sort of made fun of them. It was like, what? Toughen up, what's the big deal? And that's part of the risk of being vulnerable is you don't know. And I'm very pleased that they trusted me enough to kind of take a chance to do this because we don't always know, as soon as you're vulnerable, it means you could be hurt.
Right.
But the payoff is, relationship.
Together, yes. Yeah.
Susan, you've been very patient.
Thanks. I'll lower the hand. This is reminding me of painful conversation I had with a good friend who has adult children. She's older than I am. Her kids are older than mine. They're in their 50s. And she's hurt by their remoteness, their lack of showing concern for her, and she's getting frail and isolated. Their father divorced. They divorced, and it was painful for her. And I just don't know what to say. My reaction is, you need to express it, but then I don't think she feels like she can. And I'm on the side of it. It's not me and my relationship.
yeah.
It's her. It's really. I just feel really badly for her that they. I don't see. It seems wrong for me to say, just share your feelings with them.
Yeah.
And I and she's afraid to. Yeah, and you have to be vulnerable. It's true.
Yeah. And this is like part of the human condition, these sort of minor and major estrangements from family. And the Torah is just filled with stories about people mad at each other, not talking at each other, talking to each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a story of somebody not telling somebody that they're upset, but that's an important piece, and it's not an easy piece.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that, Susan. Marianne.
Yeah, talking about, it's kind of related to what you all have been saying. I did tell someone that I was hurt, my sister, that I was hurt by something, and it didn't go well. So that's the risk, I guess, that you take.
Mhm.
That's the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry that did not go well, but yeah, it is a risk. So this brings us to the last bullet. I'll read this, and then Wendy, I'll call on you. Is sort of, how do we bring chesed into this? And the idea that chesed is supporting another person without expecting anything in return. And I just have this like feeling that all of this is connected to relationship. And when there's inability to kind of talk about hurt, it gets in the way of relationship. Wendy.
Well, yeah, this is a really good segue. And what I was going to say is that I went out of my box and actually had to talk to my son about something that he said. But Hesed, it's because I love him that I did it. And it really opened up communication. It's like now he feels like he can say things to me. So here's what he said. It wasn't a bad thing. We're driving along and it's really hot. And his little daughter says, my little granddaughter, she says, Dad, why is it hot? So my son, I think he thinks he's being funny. I don't know. My son says, well, why don't you ask Ima and Abba and Nona and Daddy Nona and Pops and Nana, their grandparents, about why we have created this horrible climate change with the warming. So I'm like, and I'm like Joanne, I would love to just have jumped on it at the time, but with the kids in the car and things, and I didn't know what his reaction would be. So I didn't say anything. So after I got home, I don't know if I did it on the phone or text, because we're okay with text and things. I just said that I felt really strange that you would kind of put that on us. They don't see us very much. And I sure don't want her to think every time she's hot that it's my fault, or I took it on my fault. So, but it was all 6 of our faults. And he was very good about it. And he just said, oh, and he was sorry. So now I feel like we've opened up communication more. So but it's difficult sometimes, because sometimes I think both people might owe an apology to one another. And then who's going to be first, and how are you going to open that up? And that makes it a little bit difficult, especially if the other person has bullied you and badgered you and harassed you, but you feel like you have to apologize too. Then it's hard to know where to go from there. That's why, like with Joanne, she's saying it right away. Sometimes I have to think about it before I can do that.
Yeah. Linda.
Sometimes the best or the only answer in the moment is to say,
I don't, I don't really know, but I'm gonna think about it and research it and maybe I'll come up with something.
Mm.
And also I wanted to say that when we do what we think is the best thing, however it's accepted by the other person, I think we have to at least say to ourselves that I did what I thought was the right thing, but I can't take on too much of where the other person is.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe, this is, but thank you, Linda. And I think that's well said that we can't take on where the other person is. And that was making me think, well, if Chesed is supporting or doing something for another person without expecting anything in return, maybe that vulnerability could be seen as an act of Chesed. I'm going to put this out there because I'm going to try to build on our relationship. And I may not get anything in return, or I may get something crappy in return, but I'm going to take the chance because, I want to, we say the world is built on chesed. I want to try to, I'm going to put the brick up. And if you knock the brick down, well, then the wall's not going to get as high as it could have been. Or I don't know, maybe this analogy is falling apart, so to speak. But, all right, well, we're going to start heading into breakout rooms in a second. And for this week's topic, can I have a volunteer to read?
As a new therapist in training, I was puzzled about why I kept feeling remarkably sleeping during my sessions with one particular client. My supervisor taught me to recognize my fatigue and yawning as a sign of tension, not tiredness. Are there times when tension leads you to feel fatigue or procrastinate? How might alacrity help you?
Okay, so I will put this in the chat. And we'll get the breakout rooms going. Okay, the rooms are open.
Hello.
Hey, welcome back.
Uh,
So how are
we
the?
were mid-conversation, but maybe
Yeah,
we'll have
I know,
another
it's never
topic.
as long as we'd like. But I wanted to give us a little bit of time to kind of hear maybe some insights or things that you discussed that you would feel comfortable sharing. Again, don't share what your partner shared. Let them decide whether they want to share it. Who has something they'd like to say? Yeah, Joanne.
I guess sometimes some people it's very difficult to get them to hear what you're trying to say. And that's frustrating. And what does that have to do with enthusiasm? I don't know. But, it's like if I'm trying to fix something, I'm working on a committee on something, we're trying to edit something, and they like totally put down my edit. And then I said, oh, you mean it needs a comma? And then the final product doesn't have the comma. And then now that I'm going to follow up on it. That's alacrity, I think. Because I don't think it will dampen my enthusiasm if I'm not taken seriously. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I also think alacrity or enthusiasm or the Hebrew zerazut, it can help us start tasks and also complete tasks and also kind of keep going. And so it's like, well, okay, I'm going to keep going on this, I want to be heard. Wendy.
Well, after we discussed, then I realized that to approach someone, to apologize to them through Chesed just might mean focusing on the divine spark that you see in that person, rather than going in visualizing what's going to happen, which you can tell that's kind of where I am with things, unless I'm going to visualize it in a real positive way. But that doesn't sound like me in this case. But I think that where Hesed would come in. I think then even your voice, that love for that person would be in your voice, or even if you're loving that person because of who they are or where they are in your life, then they take it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my Maimonides also said if you're going to rebuke someone, if you're going to give someone some negative feedback, which asking for apology is a kind of rebuke. You want to make it sure it's in private, kind of like you did with your son. And you also want to kind of come from a loving place and let them know it's sort of for their own good, maybe for the good of the relationship. That's where it's coming from. And so yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there.
I think it would be hard to have a future with this person without that healing taking place. If you see, I mean, that's why I heard you saying if you go from a loving place, privately from a loving place, then it might give them the opportunity to go forward with. We'll see. I mean, I'm not expecting much. That's a good thing.
Thanks, Wendy. Other thoughts, observations?
I heard a teaching recently, and I'm not sure if one of our rabbis wrote it in a little drosh or something, or where I heard it, but that if you don't rebuke someone if you're pretty sure they're not gonna accept it, that they're not gonna take it in. And it's a story of this rabbi coming to visit some congregant who's very wealthy, and he just goes in and he just sits there and doesn't talk to him. And the guy says, like, what's up? Why did you come here? He gets up to leave. And so he says, well, this is he shared he had the guy had to ask the question, what's the issue here? And he gets next sort of a story that explains how he could do something important in his life. He could do a good deed, and it's positive. But the idea is that you just come and you're silent about it. You don't act on it. It was an interesting story, new to me. Hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, and I think part of the idea behind that is it's a mitzvah to give advice that will be heeded, and it's also a mitzvah not to give advice that won't be heeded, because you're just going to make the person dislike you. Don't rebuke a scorner, because then they'll hate you, is one of the associated teachings of that. So but yeah, I love that. That's a great connection, Susan. Thanks for bringing that in. And that's another piece to balance, because maybe, okay, alacrity, I'm going to go in, I'm going to tell this person, and well, maybe that's too much alacrity. Maybe it's not the time. Maybe this is the time to just sit there. So, yeah. Definitely not.
Yeah, that spectrum you put on there is real important. I just go to one end of it and I say that's where my issue is. But I know I'm enthusiastic about lots of stuff, but over enthusiasm is not usually my issue. So.
Yes. Well,
the word enthusiasm doesn't cover it.
Yeah, I was speaking with a college student lately who may or may not be related to me. And they were saying how they were in this job and they didn't really like it and wasn't sure they wanted to commit, and said, well, maybe it's just me and I'm just lazy and this and that. Meanwhile, they had been talking about all the 8 gazillion classes and other activities they were doing. And it's like, well, maybe you just don't want to do this job. Maybe it has nothing to do with your lack of anything. It's just the job sucks and you don't want to do it. So, so there's that angle too. And we create these stories about ourselves sometimes that, well, this must be something wrong with me. God, I remember that in like this one corporate job where I was like, oh, it must be me and I suck and blah, blah, blah. And then after I was out of that job, I'm like, oh my God, what a snake pit. I'm really glad to be out of there. There's nothing wrong with me. It was them. So sorry to go on and on about that. All right, well, I think we're a little bit over time, so we will close the way we always do with a short meditation. So once again, take a nice leisurely inhale and a nice leisurely exhale. Let's take a moment of gratitude to ourselves and to the other people in this call for showing up today. Enthusiasm, alacrity begins with showing up. We've all shown up today and brought ourselves and brought our wisdom and brought our listening. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Thank you all so much for being here. I think next week we'll do a third week of alacrity. I think there's more ground that we can cover. So we'll do that. And I'm wishing you an early Shabbat Shalom, a great week ahead, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi
you.
Greg.
Thank you very